Have you ever built a home with your own blood and sweat, only to watch your family use it as a prop for their cheap lies? That weekend, they swaggered into my lake house empty-handed, expecting a lavish barbecue, but this time, they walked into a brutal trap that shattered their fake reality in a single afternoon. Stay until the end, because this revenge is more satisfying than any movie script you have ever seen. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Maya Revenge Stories. Unfortunately, YouTube has completely demonetized our channel, leaving us with zero budget to keep things running, which means we will not be uploading any new videos here for the foreseeable future. Instead, we are moving our operations over to Patreon. If you enjoy today's story, please consider supporting us by joining the Maya Revenge Stories Patreon, where you will find exclusive, true stories that are even better, much longer, and incredibly detailed. Stories we simply cannot publish on YouTube, fully produced with multiple emotional voice actors bringing the drama to life. You can join us right now by scanning the Patreon QR code on your screen or by clicking the link in the description or the pinned comment below. Now, let us dive right into today's story and meet our main character, Bianca Vega. I am Bianca Vega, 32 years old, and a senior systems engineer at Omnistrata Innovations, while my peers in their 20s were out partying, traveling the world, and living their best lives. I spent my youth staring at lines of code, working 80 hours a week, and saving every single penny. My sacrifice finally paid off when I bought my absolute dream home, a gorgeous modern villa right on the shores of Lake George, New York. It was my sanctuary, a testament to my hard work, but to my family, it was just another stage for their grand, pathetic theatrical production. Let me introduce you to the leeches in my life. My father, Arthur, is a man whose ego is infinitely larger than his bank account. My mother, Lorraine, believes she is a high society matriarch who just temporarily misplaced her millions. And then there is my younger sister, Savannah, a self-proclaimed lifestyle influencer whose entire brand is built on a foundation of pure delusion. To them, my house was not an accomplishment I earned, it was our family estate. They firmly believed that because we shared the same blood, my financial success was their personal slush fund. Every time they decided to grace my lake house with their presence, it was exactly the same exhausting routine. They would roll up the driveway in their leased luxury cars, completely empty-handed, not a single bottle of wine, not a side dish, not even a bag of ice. Yet, their expectations were astronomical. As soon as they walked through the front door, the demands would start pouring in. "Bianca, darling, tell me you picked up that vintage Cabernet we loved last time," my mother would say, casually tossing her fake designer bag onto my custom leather sofa. "And please tell me you got the real Wagyu beef, not that cheap supermarket garbage." I would spend thousands of dollars on a single weekend just to feed their delusions. Truffles, imported cheeses, artisan breads, and the most expensive cuts of meat money could buy. And while I was sweating in the kitchen, marinating, grilling, and plating their gourmet meals, what were they doing? They were staging elaborate photo shoots by my infinity pool. Savannah would pose with a glass of champagne she did not buy, overlooking a lake she did not pay taxes to live on, posting captions like, "Living the absolute best life at our family lake house, blessed and highly favored." My parents would take selfies on my patio furniture, tagging themselves as proud homeowners, enjoying the fruits of their non-existent labor. I was nothing more than an invisible maid in my own home. I cooked. I served. I cleaned up the absolute disaster zone they left behind, and I paid for every single second of it. Whenever I tried to bring up the cost, Arthur would wave his hand dismissively. "Family takes care of family. Bianca, do not be so greedy. We gave you life, and this is just a small way you can show some gratitude." The sheer audacity of it all was suffocating. I stomached their toxic behavior for years because I was conditioned to believe that family loyalty meant infinite financial support. But my patience completely snapped when I accidentally discovered the disgusting truth behind their perfectly curated upper-middle-class facade. One afternoon, my mother left her iPad unlocked on my kitchen counter. I did not mean to snoop, but a notification popped up from a debt collection agency. That one notification opened a Pandora box of financial ruin. I scrolled through the emails and my blood ran ice cold. They were drowning in debt. My parents had secretly taken out dozens of predatory loans and maxed out a terrifying number of high-interest credit cards just to buy luxury clothes, lease expensive cars, and maintain the illusion that they were wealthy. They were flat broke. Savannah was no better. Her so-called successful fashion startup was actually being funded by cash advances from my parents, which meant, ultimately, it was being funded by the money they saved by leeching off of me. They were not just using me for free vacations. They were systematically draining my resources so they could allocate whatever little credit they had left toward buying designer labels to impress strangers on the internet. I was the financial pillar holding up their pathetic house of cards. They felt entitled to my money while they financially ruined themselves for social media likes. It was a sick, twisted joke, and I was the punchline. That was the day the sister and daughter they knew completely died. I did not confront them right away. Oh no, that would have been entirely too easy. As an engineer, I do not just react to system failures. I analyze the flaws. I build a solution, and I execute it with absolute precision. I was going to let them keep digging their own grave, and I was going to make sure the whole world was watching when they finally fell in. The storm did not begin with a crash of thunder. It began with a simple, vibrating buzz against the surface of my oak desk at exactly 4:15 on a Friday afternoon. It was a group text message from my mother. Lorraine. There was no greeting. There was no polite inquiry asking if I was busy, if I had plans, or if I even wanted company in my own home. It was a direct, militaristic order. "We are arriving Sunday at 12 noon sharp," the message read. "Make sure the patio is spotless. The pool boy needs to have skimmed the water by 10 in the morning. We are hosting a very important guest. Go to that upscale butcher in town and get 4 pounds of the A5 Wagyu ribeyes, the colossal tiger prawns, and a wheel of that imported brie we had last Thanksgiving. Have the champagne chilled on ice by 11:30. Do not embarrass us." I sat there staring at the screen, calculating the sheer audacity. The grocery list alone would cost me well over $1,000, not counting the premium champagne. But before I could even begin to process the blinding rage bubbling in my chest, my phone screen flashed again. An incoming call. It was Savannah. I swiped the green button and put the phone on speaker. Before I could even say a word, my sister launched into her dictation. Her voice was dripping with that sickening, fake corporate authority she loved to use when she was trying to sound important. "Listen to me very carefully, Bianca," Savannah commanded. "I do not have time to repeat myself. Mom already sent you the grocery list. But this is not just one of our regular weekend getaways. I am bringing Marcus Thorne with us." The name echoed in my home office, Marcus Thorne. Even though I despised the startup hustle culture, working in the tech industry meant I knew exactly who he was. He was a ruthless, legendary venture capitalist from Silicon Valley. The man managed a fund worth over $800 million. He was known for making or breaking companies with a single signature. I have been trying to get a pitch meeting with him for 6 months for my luxury activewear line, Savannah continued, her voice practically vibrating with greed. He finally agreed to a casual lunch. He is looking to invest $500,000 in seed money, and I am not going to let you ruin this for me. "Ruin it?" I asked, my voice dangerously calm. How exactly would I ruin a meeting at my own house? That was when she dropped the first devastating bomb. Savannah let out a sharp, condescending sigh, like she was explaining basic math to a toddler. "Well, that is the thing," Savannah said smoothly. "Marcus is an old money snob. He only invests in founders who come from generational wealth. He needs to know I have a massive safety net. So, Mom and Dad had a little chat with his assistant. We told him that the Lake George Villa is our historic family estate. We told him it has been in the Vega family for 3 generations and that it is part of my inherited trust." The air in my office instantly turned to lead. I stopped breathing for a solid 5 seconds. They had not just claimed my success as a family victory anymore. They had officially stolen my property title in a fabricated narrative to commit investment fraud. They were using the sanctuary I bled for to run a $500,000 con job on a Silicon Valley billionaire. So here are the ground rules for Sunday, Savannah ordered, oblivious to the silence on my end. You need to be completely invisible. Wear a plain black polo shirt and black slacks. You will stay in the outdoor kitchen area the entire time. You are the private chef we hired for the weekend. When you serve the plates, you pour the drinks from the right, you clear the plates from the left, and you do not speak unless spoken to. If Marcus asks you a question, you smile, answer briefly, and go back to the grill. You absolutely do not mention that you work in tech. You do not mention your stupid engineering job, and you sure as hell do not tell him you own the house. Do you understand me? You are the hired help. Play the part. A normal person would have screamed. A normal person would have hung up the phone, driven straight to the police station, or sent a blistering text telling them to never set foot on the property again. But I was not a normal person. I was a senior systems engineer. My entire career was built on identifying structural vulnerabilities and executing catastrophic system shutdowns. When a virus infiltrates a network, you do not just unplug the machine. You quarantine it. You map its pathways. And you let it dig itself so deep into the trap that when you finally initiate the purge, every single trace of the infection is annihilated. All the years of resentment, the unpaid credit card bills, the thousands of dollars in groceries, the endless disrespect, it all crystallized in that one solitary moment. The rage evaporated, replaced by a cold, calculating, mechanical silence. They wanted to use my life as a prop for their stage play. I decided right then and there to give them the exact spotlight they were begging for. I understand, I replied, my voice steady, betraying absolutely zero emotion. I will handle everything for Sunday. Just bring yourselves. Good, Savannah snapped. Do not mess this up. The line went dead. I slowly set my phone down on the desk. A slow, dark smile crept across my face. I opened a new window on my dual monitors and began typing. The trap was officially set. Saturday came and went. The upscale butcher shop in town never saw my face. The boutique wine merchant never swiped my credit card. I did not buy 4 pounds of Wagyu beef. I did not buy colossal tiger prawns, imported brie, or vintage champagne. In fact, I did not even buy a single bag of charcoal. My massive, stainless steel double-door refrigerator remained an echoing cavern of absolute emptiness. The gleaming marble countertops were completely bare. The outdoor grill on the patio was cold, scrubbed clean, and tightly wrapped in its heavy canvas weather cover. I wanted the physical emptiness of my home to perfectly mirror the emotional void they had left in my life. They demanded a feast provided by an invisible servant. Instead, they were going to get exactly what they had contributed to my success. Nothing. Zero. But I was not going to just let them show up to an empty house and play the victims. That would allow them to spin the narrative, to tell Marcus Thorne that their hired chef had a sudden emergency, or that I was just a mentally unstable employee who ruined their perfect afternoon. No, the truth needed to be displayed with undeniable mechanical precision. As a senior systems architect at Omnistrata Innovations, my expertise lies in building networks that cannot be compromised. When I purchased the lake house, the very first thing I did was rip out the contractor-grade wiring. I spent 6 months meticulously designing and installing a custom military-grade, smart home ecosystem. Everything from the window shades to the pool temperature to the outdoor audio matrix was controlled by a centralized server locked in my basement. It was a digital fortress, and I held the only master key. Late Saturday night, while the rest of the world slept, I sat in the dark glow of my multiple monitors and opened my command terminal. My fingers flew across the mechanical keyboard, writing a brand new, highly aggressive automation script. I titled the executable file Judgment. First, I needed the ammunition. I logged into my secure cloud storage and began pulling the receipts of their parasitic existence. I downloaded the official county property deed, highlighting my name as the sole, exclusive owner of the estate in a bright, neon red font. Next came the financial records. I pulled the bank statements showing the exact dates and times I had paid off Arthur and his predatory loans. I exported the credit card bills detailing Savannah and her thousands of dollars in unauthorized luxury purchases. made on a card she had stolen from my purse 2 years ago and convinced me to leave open for her business emergencies. I arranged all of this data into a brutally minimalist, high-resolution presentation. There were no flashy transitions, just stark white text on a pitch-black background, exposing every single lie they had ever told. I programmed the judgment script to seize absolute control of the House Entertainment Network. Once activated, it would simultaneously cast the presentation to the four 75-inch waterproof television screens mounted around the patio. It would lock out all manual volume controls and route the audio feed directly through the hidden surround sound ceiling speakers at maximum decibels. I tested the script in a sandbox environment. Flawless execution, no lag, no bypass options. Sunday morning arrived, bright and completely cloudless. The surface of the lake outside my window looked like a sheet of smooth glass. At exactly 9 o'clock in the morning, I began my final preparations. I walked through the house, making sure there was absolutely nothing they could use to save face. I locked the master bedroom suite and deadbolted the guest rooms. I pulled out my phone and accessed the master control application. I activated the entire array of perimeter and patio security cameras, switching their recording settings to ultra-high definition and enabling the directional microphones. I wanted every single frame, every panicked whisper, and every drop of sweat captured in perfect clarity. At 10:15, I grabbed my car keys, walked out the front door, and locked it behind me. I climbed into my car and drove exactly 10 miles down the winding highway to a quiet, rustic tavern located on the opposite side of the lake. The place was nearly empty this early in the day. I took a seat in a dark corner booth facing the wall, ordered a large black coffee, and opened my laptop. I connected to my private encrypted server and brought up the live camera feeds on my screen. The patio looked beautiful, bathed in the midday sun, yet completely sterile. I took a slow sip of my coffee, feeling my pulse beat in a steady, calm rhythm. The digital trap was fully armed. The bait was set. Now, all I had to do was sit back and wait for the rats to walk right in. At exactly 12 noon, the crunch of gravel echoed through my headphones. Sitting in the dim corner booth of the tavern, I leaned closer to my laptop screen. The high-definition security cameras panning over the driveway captured two pristine, black luxury vehicles pulling up to the front of my house. The lead car was a massive Mercedes SUV, one I immediately recognized by the dealership license plate frame as a weekend rental. My father, Arthur, stepped out of the driver's side with the exaggerated swagger of a self-made billionaire, adjusting his designer sunglasses and buttoning his sports coat. From the second vehicle, a sleek black sedan, Savannah emerged. She was dressed in a pristine white linen suit, looking every bit the wealthy, young entrepreneur she was pretending to be. Then, Marcus Thorne stepped out. He wore a simple, perfectly tailored dark suit with no tie. He had the cold, analytical gaze of a man who evaluated million-dollar risks before breakfast. He looked around the property, his expression entirely unreadable. The directional microphones, hidden in the porch eaves, picked up their audio with crystal clarity. "Welcome to the Vega family estate, Marcus," Arthur boomed, extending his arms wide as if he had laid every single brick himself. "We bought this land a few years back, built the whole place from the ground up. I wanted a quiet little sanctuary away from the noise of the city, a place where the family could gather." "It is quite an impressive property," Marcus replied, his voice deep and measured. "The modern architecture contrasts very well with the natural landscape." "Oh, you have not even seen the best part," Lorraine chimed in, stepping out of the Mercedes with an oversized sun hat and a fake designer tote bag draped over her forearm. "The interior is entirely my vision, and the outdoor entertaining area is simply to die for. We love hosting out there." Savannah walked confidently toward the front door, pulling a spare key from her designer purse. "Come on in, Marcus," she said, her voice dripping with artificial sweetness. "We have our private chef setting up a fantastic barbecue in the back, Wagyu beef, fresh seafood, the works. I want to show you the infinity pool while we wait for the champagne." I watched them step into the foyer, my finger hovering over the keyboard. They were marching straight into the execution chamber with massive, arrogant smiles on their faces. The indoor cameras tracked them as they walked through the grand living room. Arthur pointed out the custom vaulted ceilings and the stone fireplace, taking full credit for the design choices I had spent months agonizing over with my architects. Lorraine casually adjusted my expensive vases, acting like the lady of the manor inspecting her domain. They moved with such absolute confidence. They fully expected to walk through those heavy glass doors and be greeted by the rich, mouth-watering scent of grilling meat. They expected chilled crystal flutes waiting on silver platters. They expected me, clad in a plain black uniform, slaving away in the background to maintain their flawless illusion. But as Arthur dramatically pushed open the double French doors leading to the backyard, the grand theatrical production came to a violently abrupt halt. They stepped out onto the patio, and the collision between their towering delusions and my engineered reality was a thing of absolute beauty. Arthur froze mid-step. Lorraine bumped into his shoulder, her jaw dropping open. Savannah walked out behind them, confidently gesturing toward the pool, before she too stopped dead in her tracks. There was no smoke billowing into the summer sky. There was no sizzling sound of imported beef hitting hot iron. There was no silver bucket of ice holding expensive vintage champagne. The outdoor kitchen was entirely barren. The massive stainless steel grill was stone cold, firmly wrapped in its heavy gray canvas weather cover. The long custom teak dining table was completely stripped bare, not a single plate, fork, or napkin in sight. The countertops were wiped clean and sterile. There was no food. There was no water. There was no invisible servant waiting in the wings. My parents came to my lake house for a barbecue empty-handed. This time, I did nothing, and they stared. They just stood there, their empty hands hanging limply at their sides. The silence on the patio was so thick and suffocating it felt like physical pressure. The only sounds picked up by the microphones were the gentle chirping of birds in the pine trees and the soft lapping of the lake water against the private dock. Marcus Thorne stopped behind them. He slowly lowered his sunglasses, staring at the empty, lifeless patio, and then turned his head to look at Savannah. He raised one single, inquisitive eyebrow. The mask of the wealthy. Vega family began to crack, splinter, and shatter in real time. Arthur turned his head frantically, his face flushing a violent, panicked shade of crimson red. Lorraine clutched her fake designer bag against her chest, her eyes darting around the empty yard as if a magical feast was suddenly going to materialize out of the bushes. Pure, unadulterated terror washed over Savannah's face, her entire fashion startup, her desperately needed $500,000 investment. It was all evaporating right before her eyes. The safety net she had promised Marcus was suddenly looking like a barren wasteland, desperate to salvage any remaining shred of dignity. Savannah went on the offensive. She stomped her expensive heels against the stone pavers, her voice shrill and trembling with panic. "Bianca!" Savannah screamed into the empty yard, trying to sound like an authoritative boss dealing with a disobedient employee. "Bianca, where are you? This is completely unacceptable. Where is the food? We have a guest." She waited for a response, her chest heaving. She expected me to come running out of the bushes with an apology and a tray of appetizers, but no one came. Savannah yelled my name again, louder this time, her voice cracking with pure desperation. The only thing that answered her was a cool, quiet breeze blowing across the surface of the lake. Arthur's face was a mask of furious, boiling confusion. His eyes darted around the desolate patio as if hoping a fully catered barbecue would magically drop from the sky. Breathing heavily, he jammed his trembling hand into the breast pocket of his rented sports coat and pulled out his smartphone. I knew exactly what his next move was. He was going to call me. He was going to scream into the receiver, demand that I rush out of the kitchen, and force me to fix this embarrassing disaster before his wealthy guest realized the truth. Sitting in the dimly lit corner booth of the tavern 10 miles away, I watched his thumb hover over his screen. A cold, predatory calm washed over my entire body. I did not give him the chance to make that call. I simply reached out and firmly pressed the enter key on my laptop. The execution was instantaneous, brutal, and flawlessly synchronized. A sharp, piercing, three-tone warning chime suddenly blared from the hidden surround sound ceiling speakers embedded in the patio overhang. The sound was so incredibly loud and unexpected that Arthur flinched violently, dropping his phone right onto the hard stone pavers. Before anyone could even gasp, the house reacted. Heavy, motorized blackout security shades dropped from the exterior frames of the glass French doors with a synchronized, mechanical thud. In less than 3 seconds, the patio was completely sealed off from the interior of the house. They were physically locked outside, isolated and trapped on their empty stage. Then, the true show began. The 475-inch waterproof television screens, mounted strategically around the outdoor entertainment area, powered on simultaneously. The sudden burst of blinding white light from the screens cast a harsh, unforgiving glare over their terrified faces. There was no soothing background music. There were no curated slideshows of our supposed happy family vacations. The screens displayed one single, high-resolution document. It was the official county property deed, and right in the center of the document, highlighted in a blinding, neon red font that practically burned through the screen, were the words, "Sole owner, Bianca Vega." Arthur stared at the screen, his jaw hanging completely unhinged, the last drop of color violently drained from his face, leaving him looking like a freshly embalmed corpse. Lorraine let out a strangled, pathetic gasp. She instinctively clutched her fake designer bag against her chest, her eyes wide with unadulterated horror, as if her precious handbag could somehow shield her from the undeniable truth radiating from the screens. But the judgment script was just getting started. I tapped the spacebar, and the screens seamlessly shifted to the next slide. It was a meticulously compiled spreadsheet of Arthur and his catastrophic financial history. The screens flashed highly magnified copies of his multiple defaulted predatory loans, the sky-high interest rates, and the aggressive collection agency notices. Every single penny of his crippling debt was broadcast in ultra-high definition for the legendary Silicon Valley investor to see. Next came Savannah. The screens transitioned to the massive credit card statements she thought were buried forever. Marcus Thorne stood perfectly still, his eyes fixed intensely on the displays as they scrolled through thousands of dollars in unauthorized charges. Designer shoes, luxury handbags, and expensive salon treatments flashed across the monitors, right next to the corresponding bank transfer receipts, proving that I had personally paid off every single one of those debts to save her from bankruptcy. The evidence was irrefutable. Her so-called successful fashion startup, the one she desperately needed $500,000 to fund, was nothing but a black hole financed by my stolen money. Then came the final slide. The stark white background vanished, replaced by pitch black. In the center of the screens, glowing in bold, crimson letters, was a single, massive sentence. The Vega family are broke frauds. The silence that followed was heavy, toxic, and utterly delicious. I leaned into the directional microphone connected to my laptop, my voice transmitting through the outdoor speakers with a chilling, mechanical clarity that echoed aggressively across the lake. "Welcome, Mr. Marcus, to my personal property," I announced, my voice slicing through the thick, panicked air. "The people you are currently with do not own a single brick here, and they certainly have never contributed a single cent to buy you a barbecue." Down on the patio, the destruction was absolute. Arthur and Lorraine were completely paralyzed, turned to stone by a state of sheer, apocalyptic shock. The wealthy, upper-middle-class illusion they had spent years meticulously crafting had been vaporized in less than 60 seconds. They had absolutely nowhere to run and no lies left to tell. Savannah, however, completely lost her mind. The agonizing reality of losing her investor broke her facade into a million tiny pieces. She collapsed to her knees, screaming hysterically. She scrambled toward the nearest television screen, her pristine white linen suit scraping harshly against the rough stone pavers, ruining the fabric. She began pounding her fists frantically against the waterproof glass, shrieking for the system to shut down. "Turn it off!" Savannah shrieked, dark mascara tears streaming down her face and ruining her perfect makeup. "You psychotic witch! Turn the screens off right now. This is a lie. Marcus, do not look at it. It is all a fabricated lie. She scrambled frantically around the stone pillars, desperately looking for a remote control, searching for a power cord to pull. But there was absolutely nothing she could do. The televisions were hardwired deep into the walls, and the entire smart home network was completely locked down by my master override script. The screens remained blazing bright, casting the glowing red words over her pathetic, sobbing frame. The invisible maid had just dropped the guillotine, and the execution was a spectacular success. Amidst the shrieking of my sister and the paralyzed silence of my parents, I waited for the final shoe to drop. I expected Marcus Thorne to storm off in a furious rage, completely disgusted by the absolute waste of his precious weekend. Instead, something entirely unprecedented happened. Marcus Thorne began to laugh. It was not a polite, uncomfortable chuckle. It was a deep, booming laugh that echoed across the patio, completely drowning out Savannah and her pathetic sobs. Arthur and Lorraine snapped their heads toward him, their eyes wide with sheer confusion. Savannah stopped clawing at the waterproof screen and stared at the billionaire as if he had suddenly grown a second head. Still chuckling, Marcus reached into the inner pocket of his perfectly tailored suit jacket. He did not pull out his phone to call his driver, and he did not pull out a business card. He pulled out a sleek, solid black key card attached to a silver lanyard. He held it up in the harsh glare of the television screens. Engraved in bold silver lettering across the top of the card was the corporate logo for Omnistrata Innovations. "Did you really think," Marcus said, his voice dripping with absolute contempt, "that a man who manages nearly $1 billion in venture capital does not run a comprehensive background check on the people he takes meetings with?" Savannah trembled, her mouth opening and closing like a suffocating fish, but no words came out. "I am a senior board member at Omnistrata Innovations," Marcus declared, taking a slow, deliberate step toward the shivering mess that was my sister. "Bianca Vega is not just an employee. She is one of the most brilliant, highly valued systems architects in our entire global network. When you first approached my assistant with your pathetic little fashion pitch, I ran your name. The background check immediately flagged your sister, and more importantly, it flagged this exact property address, which happens to be listed in her executive file as her primary, sole residence." Arthur stumbled backward, his knees finally buckling as he collapsed into one of the expensive patio chairs. Lorraine covered her face with her trembling hands, letting out a soft, high-pitched wail of total defeat. "The only reason I agreed to drive all the way up here for this ridiculous charade," Marcus continued, his eyes locked onto the security camera lens above the door, knowing perfectly well that I was watching, "was because the board has been trying to figure out how to corner Bianca for a private meeting. We want to promote her to the position of Regional Chief Technology Officer. I figured showing up at her house under the guise of an investment meeting with her delusional family would be an amusing way to deliver the offer in person." Marcus slowly turned his gaze back to Savannah. The amusement vanished from his face, replaced by a gaze so violently cold it could have frozen the lake. "You plan to use the property of my absolute best employee to scam me out of my money?" Marcus asked, his tone razor-sharp. "The play is officially over." Sitting in the tavern, a massive, triumphant smile spread across my face. The sheer poetry of the moment was intoxicating. I leaned into the microphone one last time. "Thank you for the visit, Marcus," I said, my voice echoing through the yard. "My assistant will email your office on Monday morning to finalize the contract details for the new position. As for the rest of you, your eviction is effective immediately. Goodbye." I did not wait for them to scramble. I simply pressed the final command key on my laptop. Instantly, the high-pressure, commercial-grade irrigation system buried beneath the pristine lawn roared to life. Dozens of hidden sprinkler heads shot up from the grass, blasting thick, heavy streams of icy lake water directly onto the patio. The synchronized jets hit Arthur and Lorraine square in the chest, soaking their expensive, rented clothes in a matter of seconds. Savannah shrieked in absolute terror as a high-power stream of water completely destroyed her pristine white linen suit and washed away whatever was left of her makeup. They scrambled like terrified rats, fleeing a sinking ship. Arthur slipped on the wet stone pavers, falling hard on his side before scrambling back to his feet. Lorraine dropped her fake designer bag into a massive puddle and did not even bother to pick it up. Savannah ran screaming toward the side gate, entirely abandoning the illusion of grace or dignity. They practically threw themselves into their rental cars, peeling out of the driveway so fast that they left thick black tire marks on the asphalt. Marcus Thorne, who had calmly stepped under the protective awning the moment the water started, simply brushed a stray drop of water from his lapel. He looked up at the camera, gave a slight, respectful nod, and walked casually to his waiting sedan. That afternoon marked the absolute end of the Vega family in my life. I permanently blocked their phone numbers, their social media accounts, and their email addresses. 2 weeks later, I accepted the promotion to Regional Chief Technology Officer, securing a compensation package that made my previous salary look like pocket change. I never cooked another meal on that patio. The memories were too tainted. Instead, I quietly put the lake house on the extremely exclusive private market. Within a month, I sold the villa to a foreign tech billionaire for exactly 3 times the original purchase price. I packed my bags, took my massive profit, and moved across the country to start my new executive role in a brand new city, leaving my toxic family to drown in the shallow, pathetic puddle of their own making. Looking back at it all from my new penthouse office, I finally realized the ultimate truth. Walking away from the blood leeches who disguise themselves as family is not an act of cruelty. It is the purest, most absolute form of true freedom. Thank you all so much for listening to my story today. I would love to know where you are tuning in from, so please let me know your city or country in the comments below. If you found today's story satisfying and want to hear more, please remember that we have zero budget left and will not be uploading any new videos here on YouTube for the foreseeable future. We are moving our operations entirely to Patreon. Please support us by joining the Maya Revenge Stories Patreon, where you can listen to our best, longest, and most exclusive true stories that we simply cannot publish on YouTube. You can join right now by scanning the Patreon QR code on your screen or by clicking the link in the video description or the pinned comment. Thank you again, and have a wonderful day.